So a few years back, braceless AR pistols really hit a peak in popularity, and that was mainly due to the ATF redefining pistols with stabilizing braces as short barrel rifles. Now, the ATF, if you guys remember, gave gun owners a brief period to either register them as SBRs, change the barrel length, or destroy/forfeit them. But there was a fourth option some pistol owners decided to go with, and that was removing the brace off entirely. That way the gun remained a pistol. Now, legally, it wasn't that simple since the pistol could technically still accept a brace, so it pushed manufacturers to create smooth, close-ended buffer tubes that prevented the user from putting a brace back on, which is exactly what this setup has attached. Now, originally, the idea for testing a setup like this came from watching clips back in the day of what my boy 2AJ Kel would call smart individuals. And it was pretty much clips of people running braceless AR pistols and shooting them in the most questionable ways. So I figured instead of just judging off those clips, I'd throw on a close-ended buffer tube myself and see if these setups are really as uncomfortable and inaccurate as people make them out to be. So starting off, the first thing we tested, comfort. And right off the bat, it definitely feels a little weird not having a brace to accidentally rest on your shoulder. And because these buffer tubes are so short, trying to shoulder it and look through an optic isn't impossible, but it's definitely a bit uncomfortable. Now, of course, that's the whole point of these setups. They aren't meant to be shouldered. So instead, you got a few different methods when it comes to holding and shooting these things. The first way is one-handed. Now, since the whole gun is being supported by your hand and forearm, it's kind of hard to keep it stable and make accurate shots when any little movement can accidentally throw a shot off completely. A much better option would be a two-handed grip. Kind of similar how you would hold a handgun. In this case, that extra hand does a great job in giving you more control and helping you stabilize the gun a lot better. Now, these two that we just talked about are still just one point of contact. So if you want even more control, you can use your support hand on the front end while your firing hand stays on the grip. This now gives you 2 points of contact, which really helps in keeping the gun steady and makes it way more comfortable now that everything's more evenly balanced. Now, finally, if you want the utmost stability, a third point of contact is the way to go, which can be achieved a few different ways. The first is running a sling. When you extend your pistol outwards while maintaining 2 points of contact, the sling starts tightening against your body, which creates tension, acting as a potential third point of contact. Now, probably the most popular and one a lot of people would recommend is bringing the gun up to your cheek and resting the buffer tube against it. This, in my opinion, is hands down one of the most comfortable ways I've found to holding and operating a braceless pistol. Next up, accuracy. Now, in these particular videos of people shooting their pistols without a brace, it kind of makes you question how powerful the 5.56 round really is. Sure, there's a bit of kick, but your accuracy here is mainly determined not exactly by the type of round, but how you hold your pistol. A one-handed grip is probably the worst of them all due to all the weight being supported off your grip and forearm. It becomes very easy to accidentally jerk the trigger, causing you to completely miss your shot. Now, a two-handed grip does a much better job in fighting that trigger jerk and helping you get a cleaner trigger pull. But involving a second point of contact through a push-pull technique where you push into the grip with your strong hand while pulling back with your support hand to create tension is going to be the best way to lock your gun in place. But even then, one issue you might still come across is your red dot moving around and you constantly trying to find it. That's where bringing the buffer tube up and resting it against your cheek makes the biggest difference. As long as you keep it pressed against your cheek, you'll see that you rarely lose track of your red dot. Most of the time, the only thing you'll likely have to do is bring it back on target. So when it came down to testing and running a few different drills with all different methods, the one that stood out is shouldering the buffer tube right into your cheek. For me, this method is hands down the superior way to run it, and the more I trained with it, the more benefits I started to see. One that surprised me was how fast this setup actually is when it comes to presenting from a low ready position. Now, most of my training was done in open space, but I can definitely see this setup being used in tight close quarter environments like inside a vehicle, where you can still shoulder off your cheek and keep maximum control of your weapon. Same goes for homes or room clearance scenarios. Because of its compact size, it's extremely easy to peek around tight corners while staying pre-aimed. Bringing us to the last thing I want to talk about, size. Depending on the barrel length you choose, these pistols can get extremely compact once the brace is removed. For example, I'm running a 7.5-inch setup, and without a brace, it's incredibly small, which is actually one of the biggest reasons people like to conceal carry these things. Now, usually when we're talking about concealed carrying an AR pistol, we're most likely thinking through a backpack of some sort, but some of these guys take it a step further and carry these things like traditional handguns inside the waistband. Now, I do think there was definitely a time and place where running a braceless pistol made sense purely for legal reasons, but now that braces seem to be back on the table for the most part, the question becomes, does going braceless still have any real value outside of legality? Honestly, I think it does. Like I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest reasons people run a braceless setup nowadays is mainly to make their pistol as compact as possible, which can be useful in a few different situations. For example, someone who wants to carry a firearm inside a vehicle with a higher capacity and stop and power capability than a typical handgun, or maybe someone traveling with a backpack while hiking, or even someone just moving around in one of our lovely crime-infested big cities. So, while I personally don't plan on keeping my pistol without a brace, after training with it and pushing the setup a bit, I can absolutely see why some people choose to run them for beyond legal reasons. So that's all I gotta say. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe. Also, if you're interested in seeing some CCW drills, make sure to check out my Instagram at Shadow the Wicked. Also, if you want to get in contact with me, that's a great place. But on that, hope you guys have a good weekend. Stay safe and God bless.